Hello students, welcome to class today. Mr. Yan here. Today we're talking about Chapter 11, Lesson 2, Part 1, because I split the lesson in two, and today's lesson is called Rome as a Republic. So today we talk about the Republic, the plight of the plebs versus the patricians, and we'll get a little bit into Roman law. And then tomorrow we'll do what's called the Punic Wars. Very exciting. More wars and battle. Alright, hey, so they say when in Rome, do as the Romans. Well, I know at least one Roman cultural staple you don't want to follow. They had a stratified social class, kind of like the Indian caste system, but in Rome there was only two classes. At the top you had the oldest families of Rome, the elites if you will, and they were called the patricians. Uh, Most Romans were the normal Joe class, which were called the plebeians. Now, pretty much everyone calls them plebs for short. Uh, the plebs were not necessarily poor, but they did have poor people. Plebs were small-time farmers, artisans, and shopkeepers. Pretty much 95% of Rome were plebs. It's just the normal people, the non-rich people. The patricians held most of the power, and the plebs got sick of that. So we'll see what kind of trouble it causes on the next page. All right. Surprisingly, both patricians and plebeian men were full citizens with the right to vote. Plebs did lack certain rights, though, of which they were not too happy. For example, they could not hold public office or lead religious rituals. It was also illegal uh, for a pleb and a patrician to marry. The conflict between these two classes over these issues would shape the republic. Another thing is both patricians and plebs paid taxes and served in the army and things like that, but only patricians could serve in government. So you can see how that could get a little annoying. All right, Roman government. Roman government had three branches of government. They even had checks and balances, but there was no separation of powers. So you had some things that seem wonky to us, like a judge from the courts leading an army. Uh, One branch made laws, another branch ran the daily affairs of the government. The third branch, well, was the judges. The two leaders of the government were called consuls. They were patrician men that ran the army as well as the government. They had the power to veto a decision made by the other consul. Uh, they served one-year terms so that no consul became too powerful. Another high office in Rome were the praetors. Praetors were the judges that could lead armies. Imagine one of our Supreme Court judges leading an army. We're under attack. Send Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There she is, who's actually quite sassy. So the legislature of Rome consisted of 300 patrician senators that served for life. Initially, they were only advisors, but as time went on, they gained more power, like making laws. Another legislative body was the Assembly of Centuries, which sounds super cool, right? They were also all patricians. They elected the consuls and praetors, as well as passed laws. Class conflict, here we go. By 494 BC, the plebs were pretty angry. They paid taxes and served in the army, but did not have any say in government. Pretty lame. They went on strike and threatened to leave and form their own government. The plebs were 95% of Rome, so the patricians had to take this threat seriously. They allowed the plebs to have their own government body called the Council of Plebs. The council elected tribunes that would take pleb concerns to the government. Tribunes had the power to veto government decisions. Pretty crazy. Alright, in 287 BC, the plebs made massive gains. Not this kind of massive gains, but massive gains in government when the Council of Plebs was given the right to make laws for all Romans, not just other plebs. Marriages between the classes even became legal. Plebs and patricians were now legally equal, but the wealth and power of the patricians still dominated power in Rome. The Romans believed that in a time of crisis, democracy could be put on hold to deal with that crisis. One man, called a dictator, would take total control. A dictator did not have the negative connotations that it does today. After the crisis was ended, the dictator was expected to give up their power. sort of an emergency powers, like that they elected to Senator Palpatine in Star Wars. Like, oh, we have an emergency. We need somebody to take control to bypass all this red tape and government bureaucratic baloney to get this dealt with quickly. That was a dictator. One of the most famous dictators of Rome was Cincinnatus. He was a consul and was plowing his fields when word reached him that there was a threat to Rome. He had been appointed dictator by the Senate. He dropped his plow, formed an army, went and dealt with the problem, easily defeating the enemy, and marched his army back to Rome, where he quickly resigned as dictator. The whole ordeal only took 16 days. His selfless service to Rome made him a hero. He was basically practicing civic duty or his sense of responsibility to one's country. Cincinnatus was known as fiercely loyal to Rome. His example made him a role model for future leaders like George Washington, who took command of the Continental Army by appointment of a legislative body, and then when the war was over, went back home to his farm. Now, the Roman law, quickly. Roman law is perhaps Rome's most important contribution to the world. Initially, Roman law was not written down. The judges just knew the law. And the plebs did not like this, and thought the judges would always rule in favor of the patricians because they were the only one who knew the law. In 451 BC, Rome adopted its first set of written laws called the 12 Tables, because it was literally 12 tablets put up in a market for all to see. What's important about these 12 tables is laws were to be applied to the plebeians and patricians alike. This equal protection or equal application to all, regardless of wealth or status, is called the rule of law, and is a central tenet to the United States law today. Another main idea of Rome used today in the United States is the assumption of innocence until proven guilty. There they are. See? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 tables of Rome up on public display. Alright, we're actually going to stop here for today, because that was a lot for one day. The section continues on to the Punic Wars, and we'll pick that up tomorrow, and we'll have a little quizzy-wizzy for that. For today, you have a simple assignment. There's 2 questions on here. Answer them in complete sentences, please. You can bullet them 1 or 2 and 2, or if you want, you could put it in paragraph form. Just make sure you check your spelling and grammar. What are the differences between a pleb and a patrician? Pleb, remember plebs are plebeians. Or plebeians. And what are some ideas of law that originated in Rome that we still use today? Alright, that's your assignment. It's 10 points. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.